Morning, we're in Maseches Tamid. Eliezer, okay? All right. We're in Maseches Tamid, Perek Hey, Mishnah Hey, and in V'hoshev es Havoda on page 18. Tamid, Perek Hey, Mishnah Hey. And we'll continue with the Avoda of the Ketores. Just to remind everybody, there are 4 lotteries in the Beis Hamikdash, only in the morning. Lottery 1, 1 winner, Trumas Hadeshen. Lottery 2, 13 winners that have to do with either the actual korban or cleaning the Mizbeach HaKtores or cleaning the menorah. Lottery 3, Ketores. 1 winner who will bring the Ketores on the Mizbeach inside the Heichal. And lottery 4, according to the way we paskin, lottery 4 is the Kohen who is going to bring the items, the animal parts and other things that were put on the ramp of the Mizbeach. 1 Kohen, according to Rashi, or 9 Kohanim, 9 Kohanim, according to the Ritva, will bring the items up to the Mizbeach to be consumed on the Mizbeach. According to this Shita, which is the Shita we paskin like, there was no separate lottery for which Kohen would bring the coals into the Heichal upon which the Ketores would be burnt. Before we do anything, I've got to get my Midos diagram 3. Okay, in our Midos diagram 3, remember that there are 3 areas of logs on the Mizbeach, the outer Mizbeach, which is in the Azorah, and there's a very small Mizbeach inside the Heichel, which is called Mizbeach HaKetores or Mizbeach HaPnim. The coals came off the Marocha Shel Ketores here and were brought into this Mizbeach here, and then the Ketores was put on those coals. We know who the Kohen was who brought the Ketores in and who put the Ketores on the fire. He's the winner of Lottery 3. But who brought in the coals? So our shita is that the way we paskin, there was no separate payas for who would bring the coals in. The person that brought the Kohen that brought the coals in would be the Kohen who stood to the right of the Kohen who won Lottery 3. Lottery 3, winner. You're going to bring the Ketores and burn it in the Heichal. The Kohen standing to his right would be the Kohen that would bring in the coals. But there would not be a special lottery for the Kohen who would bring in the coals. That's our sheet. We talked about the other sheet in the Mishnah of Blas Ben Yaakov, who holds that there was a lottery for who would bring the coals to the Mizbeach. We're going according to the Shita Halacha, that there's no lottery for who will bring the coals to the Mizbeach, and that's what we're going to learn about today. Who brings the coals to the Mizbeach? And we're continuing with the Avoda HaKetores. And as we mentioned yesterday, Pashas Korach, Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Peites. The Gemara says that the Malach HaMoves taught Moshe Rabbeinu that the Avoda HaKetores is Otzem HaGefa, has the power in it to stop a plague. And our learning of the Maseches Ketores and how to do the Ketores should be Otzem, this terrible Magefa that we are living through, and it should speedily end. So Mishnah Hay, we've already done the 4 lotteries, and we're getting ready now to bring Ketores. We're not going to bring Ketores yet. We're not ready for it yet in terms of actually doing it. That will come later. Right now, we're preparing everything that needs to be done for the Ketores. In order, when the time comes to bring the Ketores, it's done chick-chack. We've mentioned this many times. The Avodah in the Beis Hamikdash ran like a clock. This is a king's palace. It runs absolutely efficiently. So as soon as the time comes for Ketoris, everything is in its place, ready to go. You just have to do it. The time the Ketoris comes, we're not going to start running around looking for the fire panel, looking for the Ketoris, etc. Everything's ready to go. So yesterday we learned Mishnah Dalet, the Kohen who won Lottery 3. He actually went to the Lishkas base of Tinas. We looked at it in diagram 3. He got a kaf, the big, what looks like a frying pan. He got the kaf from the table next to the Mizbech that had the 93 kalim. He took that big pan. He went up to the southern wall of the Azora where there was a place called Lishkas base of Tinas where they made the Ketoris. There he got a bazach, which was like a small bowl. Ketoris was filled to the top. It had a lid on it. That bazach, that small bowl, was put into the big pan. And now the Kohen who won Lottery 3 is going to take the pan, hold it by the handle. The bowl is in the pan, and he's going to start making his way from Lishkas base of Tinas. He's going to start walking towards the Ulam to go into the Heichel. At the appropriate time, he's getting himself ready to Mishnah Hey. Misha Zocha B'machta, the Kohen who had the schus to bring the shovel or the fire pan with the coals in, which means the Kohen that stood to the right of winner of Lottery 3, not al machtas hakesef. The first thing he did was he took a silver fire pan. We're going to soon see that there's going to be a gold fire pan and a silver fire pan. Right now, he takes a vessel. It's the machtas hakesef. It's a silver fire pan. Ola l'rosh hamizbeach. He goes up the ramp of the mizbeach. And you have a Hoshev Esvavoda. You can begin seeing the pictures on page 161. The last picture at the bottom, page 212. HaKohen shezocha b'machta ola bimin hakevesh. The Kohen who has the privilege of bringing the coals, he is going to walk up the ramp with a silver fire pan being held in his right hand, and he's going to walk along the right side of the ramp. Why is he going to walk up the right side of the ramp? Because we learned about that in Maseches Tamid. He's going to go up to the right. He's going to make a right turn. You're always making right turns. He's going to come up to the top of the Mizbeach, make a right turn, walk to the western corner of the Mizbeach, turn, which is going to really be a left turn, turn back, come back, and then he's going to be able to get the coals. So if you look at, let's see if I can find this picture quickly. Okay, if you take a look at page 75 in your Vahoshev Esvavoda, it's a picture of the Mizbeach with the 3 Marochos on it. Here's the Marocha Gedola, where animals were consumed. The Marocha Shel Ketores, smaller, from which coals were taken into the Heichel. In the Marocha Kiyum Ha'esh. This is east. This is southeast corner of the Mizbeach. This is the southwest corner of the Mizbeach. The Kohen is going to come up, make a right turn to get the coals. So if you go back to your picture, on page 161, you see the Kohen walking up the right side of the ramp. He's going to walk to the top of the Mizbeach, come around, and get some coals in his silver fire pan. Upina es hagecholim, back to the Mishnah, Halach v'Halach. He took the silver fire pan and he pushed the top coals. Remember, the fire was lit earlier. The logs have turned into amber or coal. And now the Kohen that is going to bring the coals into the Heichel, he's looking for the hottest coals possible because he still has to take the coals off the Mizbeach, walk them to the Ulam, into the Heichel, put them on the Mizbeach, and they have to remain hot enough so that when the Kohen puts the incense on them, they burn. So he has to select the hottest coals possible. We know Lahavdil, Elavav Abdullah from making barbecues that when you take off the top coals, inside, underneath those top coals, you have the hottest coals inside. So Upina Esagacholim Halach Vehalach Vechasa. He then took the silver pan, pushed the top coals to the sides so he can get to the inner coals. And he took a fire pan full of coals. Yorad, he came down the ram. He took the coals that were in the silver fire pan that he just took from his bath, and he put them into a gold fire pan. He switched it from fire pan silver into fire pan gold. If you take a look at page 162, you can see him using the silver fire pan, and he got the coals. But at the bottom of page 163, you will see the Kohen taking the coals from the silver fire pan and putting them into a gold fire pan. Why did he not go immediately with a gold fire pan and take the coals off the Mizbeach? This brings us directly to the question we raised many times. We seem to have two different halachas that contradict each other. We saw this in Midas, we've seen it in Tamid, and it appears that we don't know when to apply what, so maybe now we can have an attempt at a solution. The Kohen is going to go up to the top of the Mizbeach and use a silver fire pan and put it into glowing hot coals. We therefore give him a silver fire pan to use because glowing hot coals and the ash, etc., is going to make the fire pan dirty, and it's going to possibly do damage to it. It's going to blacken it, etc. So, because of the rule, HaTorah Chasa al Mamonim Shel Yisrael, the Torah, the Rebbeinu Shalom, has Rachmanis on Jewish money. He doesn't want us to spend our money in a wasteful way. So therefore, to take the coals off the top of the Mizbeach from the Maracha Shel Ktoros, a silver fire pan was used. That silver fire pan is going to push the top coals to the sides. It's going to dig in to get to the bottom, to get the coals. For that kind of work, we use a silver fire pan rather than a gold fire pan, which can get dirty in the process. So right now, we say, HaTorah Chasa al Mamonim Shel Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom has Rachmanis, and he would rather us use a silver fire pan than a gold fire pan because the chances are it's going to get dirty or ruined. Okay. Stop. How do we know this rule that HaTorah Chasa al Mamonim Shel Yisrael? We learn this out from halacha in Pashas Mitzayir by Tumas Batim. A house can become Tamid Saras. A Neged Saras can appear in the stones of a home. The owner of the house goes to the Kohen and asks that the Kohen come and inspect his house. The Kohen comes to inspect the house, and before the Kohen says anything, he tells the owner of the house, Upinu es habayis, clean out the house, take out the kalim from the house. So Rashi quotes Chazal. What kalim is the Kohen worried about? What kalim is the Rebbeinu Shalom worried about that he tells the Kohen, make sure the Balabayas takes the vessels out of his house? Are we talking about gold, silver, metal? What's the big deal if the Kohen utters the word Tamid? This house is Tamid, and all the gold and silver, metal, everything is in that house. So everything is Tamid. Everything is Tamid. Then you can go at the right time and be toivel them in a mikveh, and you can make them tar. What's the big deal? Why is the Rebbeinu Shalom telling the Kohen, before you say Tamid, instruct the Balabais to get his Kalim out of the house new, and if he doesn't take the Kalim out of the house, they'll become Tamid and he'll take him to a mikveh. So the Chazal tell us that the Rebbeinu Shalom is Chasam Amanim Sel Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom is concerned about Jewish people's money. They shouldn't have to lose money for unnecessary reasons. What kind of vessel? Ein lo tahara b'mikvah. There are certain vessels that you can't dunk into a mikvah. You can't do anything about it. A kli cheres, a keli that's made out of earthenware. Once it becomes tamei, ein lo tahara b'mikvah. You have to break it. Whatever you can do with it afterwards, different gemaras. But you have to break it. You can't be matayra kli cheres in the mikvah. What is a kli cheres? Like the most inexpensive type of vessel you can imagine. Not metal, not gold, not silver, not copper. What is it? It's earthenware. You take some earth, you heat it up, becomes solid, and you have another vessel. It's because of that those kli cheres that the Rebbeinu Shalom said to the Kohen, before you say the house is tamei, tell the Balabais to take his kalim out of the house. Which kalim? These cheap kli cheres that have no tahara b'mikvah. You can't take them to the mikvah, and therefore, if the Kohen says tamei before the kli cheres comes out, those kalim will be permanently lost. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, before you say the word tamei, Kohen, tell the Balabais take his kalim out of the house. God forbid he shouldn't lose these inexpensive kli cheres. So from here we learn the rule. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chasam amanim shel Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom has rachmanas on Jewish money. We shouldn't have to Hashem lose money. Similarly, we have this rule now working in the Beis Hamikdash. The Kohen is going to go up and take a shovel full in a fire pan of coal. It's going to get hot, it's going to get heated, it's going to get ash, it's going to get black, it's going to get ruined, possibly. So rather than use a gold machta, the Kohen uses a silver machta to push all the coals aside and get into the ash. The Rebbeinu Shalom, if something happens to the machta, it gets damaged or dirty, better it should be a silver one than a gold one. So the Kohen used the silver machta to do the start of the job, to get the coals. He then came down from the ram, and as you see in picture 216 at the bottom of page 163, at the bottom of the ram, he took now the coals, which are already now in the silver pan. He doesn't have to clean anything anymore. And he puts them into the gold pan, because it is this gold pan that is going to put the coals on the mizbeach in the hegel. And when we're talking about putting something on the mizbeach, then it should be gold, because then we have the flip side rule. Ein aniyus b'mokem hashivas. There's no such thing as showing poverty and cheapness in a place that's God's palace that requires a showing of great dignity. So we have two things. This is a place where one avoda gets split between two concepts. The coals are taken off the mizbeach with the silver machta, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu chasa al mamonim shel Yisrael. The Kohen comes down the ram, he takes the silver machta and takes the coals and puts it into the gold machta, because it's the gold machta that's going to put the coals on the mizbeach. And ein aniyus b'mokem hashivas. What's the difference between these two concepts? So the Mefarshim say here, and I tell you that it doesn't work perfectly in all situations. It's a very difficult sugya. When do you use HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no, don't use the gold, use the silver. And then sometimes we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is makbid. No, you have to use gold, don't use silver. So one of the rules that's brought out in this Mishnah by the Mefarshim is, if we're dealing with a hachana to a mitzvah, you're preparing to do a mitzvah. When you're preparing to do the mitzvah, but you're not doing the actual mitzvah itself, for the preparation of the mitzvah, we say the rule is Hakayra chasa al mamonim shel Yisrael. It's the preparation for the mitzvah. And at the preparation stage, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what? You can use silver. Don't use gold, which can get ruined. But when we get to the stage where we're now going to actually do the mitzvah, then we say Ein Aniyus B'Mokem Ashiras. The mitzvah has to be done in a most dignified way. So when the coals are being taken off the top of the mizbeach, which is only a preparation to take them into the heichal, that preparation is done with a silver fire pan, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu chasa al mamonim shel Yisrael. When the coals need to be put on the mizbeach, which is the mitzvah, you're actually going to put the coals on the mizbeach, then we go to the gold pan, because Ein Aniyus B'Mokem Ashiras. Okay, but this is a much more complicated sugya, but we have the two rules which are flip sides of a coin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chasa al mamonim shel Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has rachmanis on Jewish money and says, don't spend it. On the other hand, there are times HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ein Aniyus B'Mokem Ashiras. There's no such thing as being cheap. You spend all the money you can because it's God's palace. You have to know when to use each of these rules. Back to the Mishnah. So now the coals are in the gold pan. Nispasa mimeno kekav gecholim. The silver pan, which the Kohen used to take the coals off the mizbeach, held a shear called 4 kabin. We're not going to go into what that is in grams. It's 4, we'll call it 4 ounces. The silver machta had a capacity to hold 4 ounces of coals. The gold machta, which the Kohen used to pour the coals into from the silver, only had a capacity of 3 ounces. What does that mean? That means every day the Kohen who's going to go up to get the coals, he's going to get approximately 4 ounces of coals, come down the ram, put the 4 ounces in a machta that only holds 3 ounces, and there's going to be a whole bunch of coals that are going to be on the floor of the Azara. Yes, there's going to be a whole bunch of coals that will be on the floor of the Azara, and we're going to deal with that in a moment. Why did they do it this way? Again, for the same reason we learned yesterday about the Ketores. We said the Ketores was put into a bazach, into like a cup. They filled it to the top. They even made a mound on top, and they put a cap on top of it. Because when you bring in Ketores, you bring in Ketores, it's not odor. You want it to look full. You want it to look like dignified. You're bringing the full cup to the mizbeach. You don't want a half a cup or 3/4 of a cup. You want a full cup brought to the mizbeach for the Rebbeinu Shalom's avodah. Same thing here. We're going to bring the coals to the mizbeach upon which the ketores is going to be brought. We want to make sure that we're bringing a machta that's full with ketores. So, by starting with the silver machta, which has the capacity of 4, and then loading from that machta into the gold machta of 3, we are certain that the machta of gold that is 3 is going to be completely full, because 4 into 3 means the 3 is going to be completely full, and there's going to be coals that will fall on the floor. And in this way, we know we have a full machta. Okay. Now we have burning coals on the floor of the Azara. If you remember, when we learned Maseches Tamid, there's a small waterway that flows near the Mizbeach in the Azara, and it was called the Amma because it was about an Amma wide. We talked about it had a covering, they removed the covering, talked about the Amma was used to clean the floor of the Azara. So they would take, during the week, there are these hot coals now on the floor. They would put the coals into this waterway, and that would be it. And no one would burn themselves as they're walking through the Azara, especially the Kohanim, who we know are walking barefoot. The problem is on Shabbos. On Shabbos, he did the same thing. The Kohen who went up to the Mizbeach to get the coals, he took the silver pan that had 4 ounces. He went down the ram and poured that into a gold machta that only had a capacity of 3 ounces. And now he has about 1 ounce of coals all over the floor. You can't push them into the Amma because you're not supposed to extinguish burning fire on Shabbos. So what did they do? So the Mishnah says, U'b'Shabbos, hayakoifa aleim psachter. On Shabbos, when he can't take the burning coals and push them into the water, he takes the psachter. We learned about the psachter. It is page 72 of the Yehoshev Esra Avoda is the psachter. And we mentioned when we learned it earlier about the mitzvah of Hotzaos Hadeshen, we mentioned the psachter. We said we're going to come back to this psachter. On page 72, you have a picture of the psachter. It's a huge bowl. And the way they used it was, you can see there is a rope around the top of the psachter. There is a kohen at the top of the ram holding it so that it doesn't slide down very quickly and turn over and spill out everything. And there's a kohen at the bottom holding the other side of the rope who's guiding it down. What did we learn the psachter was used for then? For the mitzvah of Hotzaos Hadeshen. Remember, we learned that there are two mitzvahs. There's winner, lottery 1, Trumas Hadeshen. That was done every day before dawn. The winner of lottery 1 took a shovel full of ash off the Mizbeach and put it on the eastern side of the ram in the base Hadeshen. That was done every day before dawn. Then there was a mitzvah of Hotzaos Hadeshen. If you look at page 72, top picture, page 52, there was a place in the middle of the Mizbeach called the Tapuach. As ash gathered every day on the Mizbeach, if you want to take a look, you can take a look at page 66. 66 in your Yehoshev Havoda. You have the Marocha Gedola for animal consumption, the Marocha Ketana for the Ketores, and in the back by itself, the Marocha of Kiyum Ha'esh. In the middle, you have a mound, the Tapuach, the apple, and that's where ash would be put every day as they clean the top of the Mizbeach. The only ash that was taken off the Mizbeach every day was a shovel full of ash by winner of lottery 1, the Trumas Hadeshen. The rest of the ash was pushed towards the middle of the Mizbeach and became the Tapuach. Page 66, picture 44. At some point in time, that Tapuach got too big to stay on the top of the Mizbeach. So there was a second mitzvah, as necessary, but not every day, parentheses. Remember, we learned the Rambam says it was every day. Moving on from the Rambam. This was only done as necessary. The Tapuach got too big. The Kohanim started to shovel the ash of the Tapuach into the Psachter, page 72. This huge bowl got full of ash, and they had to now take it off the Mizbeach. So there's one Kohen at the top of the ram holding a rope, one Kohen at the bottom of the ram holding the rope, page 72, picture 52a, and that's how they took the Tapuach off the Mizbeach. That ash was taken out of the Azorah, out of the Beis HaMikdash, out of Yerushalayim, and put in a place called a Mokum Tohar, a pure place. Not anything, not a place that there was any tumah. So the Mishnah now says, Perek Hey Mishnah Hey, Shabbos, on Shabbos, these coals that fell on the ground because he took 4 ounces of coal from the silver pan and put it into the gold 3-ounce pan, and now there are coals on the floor. During the week, you push the coals into a little waterway in the Azorah. You can't do that on Shabbos. So what do you do with these coals on Shabbos? You took the psachter and you flipped it over, and you covered the coals with this psachter until after Shabbos. And what was this psachter? It was a huge vessel that held a lesser. The lesser is a measurement. It's a huge amount. It was a huge vessel, and you flip it over, cover up the coals. It had 2 chains, 2 sides of a chain, which you're looking at in page 72, picture 52a. One kohen is standing below and pulling it down. And there's a kohen who's holding the other side at the top of the ramp, so that it shouldn't roll down and get out of control and Hashem even smash the kohen below. So there's a kohen above holding it, a kohen below guiding it, and that's how they got the psachter down for Hoitzos Hadeshin. That's one use. That's what the Mishnah is going to describe now. The three purposes for which the psachter was used. Ushlosha dvorim hoisa mishameshes. The psachter was used for three different things. Koifin oisa al gabi gecholim. On Shabbos, when the gecholim, the coals, spilled on the floor of the Azorah from the silver 4-ounce pan to the gold 3-ounce pan, you took this psachter and flipped it and covered over these coals. V'ala sheretz b'Shabbos. And what happens if you find a dead sheretz? Parsha Shmini, Shmona Shrotzim. It's a parak in Masech Shabbos and the psukim in Parsha Shmini. There are 8 particular rodents that the Torah says once they die, if you come into contact with them, it's called Tumah Sheretz. The person is tumah, he has to go to the mikvah, he can't eat truma, etc. A kohen can't eat truma, etc. There's Tumah Sheretz, and it's specifically 8 rodents. So let's consider one of these rodents a rat. You find, chas v'sholem, a dead rat in the Beis HaMikdash during the week. So there's ways to take it out. There's no problem with muktzah. You can take it out. The sheretz, the dead sheretz, is found in the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos. It's muktzah. Stop. Question, who cares if it's muktzah? In the Beis HaMikdash, there's no Issa Shavuos. We learned about this in Maseches Tamid. Issa, things that are Asa Midrabanan, things that are biblically permitted, but the Rabbanon prohibited them on Shabbos because of a gezerah. Those gezeras were not applicable inside the Beis HaMikdash. You must remember the Beis HaMikdash was a special place on earth. The Jews are, yes, the coals are considered fire. The coals are lit and they're hot. The Isser, the rabbinical Isser, is not in the Beis HaMikdash. You must recall that inside the Beis HaMikdash, they were doing very interesting things on Shabbos. They were shechting karbonis, which if it's not in the Beis HaMikdash and a Yid does it, it's a malacha d'oraisa. A person's high the death penalty for shechting an animal on Shabbos. In the Beis HaMikdash, they're making fire on Shabbos. The Beis HaMikdash, they are putting animal parts on the Mizbeach, and what we would call, you're frying them or roasting them, whatever you want to call it, but these are things that, God forbid, we wouldn't even think about doing on Shabbos. In the Beis HaMikdash, they were doing this on Shabbos. So, in order to do avod in the Beis HaMikdash, there were biblical malachas that were permitted. Rabbinical malachas basically were permitted throughout the Beis HaMikdash, and there were rare exceptions to this. One of the exceptions is the Issa Muktzah. The Issa Muktzah were not necessary for any type of avoda, was held in the strictest terms inside the Beis HaMikdash. So you have a dead rat inside the Beis HaMikdash. You can't touch it. It's muktzah. On the other hand, you want to make sure that no kohen steps on it or comes into contact with it, and the kohen becomes tamid. So this is the second use of the psachter. You take the psachter and you cover up the dead rat, and that avoids a kohen coming into contact with the sheretz. Yes, you can take the psachter and put it on the coals that are on the floor because you're not directly extinguishing it. And in truth, on Shabbos, it would even be permitted in the Beis HaMikdash to take those hot coals and even put them in the water into the Amma, because it's a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa, which we won't get into, and extinguishing coals for no purpose. Sometimes people extinguish coals because they want to create ash. That's the malacha of extinguishing. If you do the malacha not for its purpose, it's called the malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. Chayfa guma ve'ein tzarech ela la'afra. A person takes a shovel on Shabbos and digs a hole in his field. He digs. The malacha of chafira was meant because you need the chafira, and a person needs a hole. He wants to bury seeds in the hole. He wants to bury treasure in a hole. So he digs a hole. What's the purpose of him digging the hole? He needs the hole. That's a malacha. If a person digs a hole in his field on Shabbos, and he doesn't care about the hole, he's not going to use the hole. The only reason he's digging the hole is because he needs the dirt of the hole to take somewhere else and use it. That's called a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. You're not doing the malacha for its essential purpose. You're not digging because you need the hole. You're digging because you want the dirt for something else. That has its own halachas. The malacha of extinguishing on Shabbos is you extinguish because you want to create pechem. You want to create ash. If the purpose of the extinguishing of a fire is to extinguish the fire and in fact make it impossible to have ash, like taking coals and put it in water, you're not going to create any ash that way. It is a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa, and therefore it should be permitted in the Beis HaMikdash. So why did they take the coals and cover them with the psach teir on Shabbos? Why not put them in the water? So again, we get the exception that even though rabbinical malachas were permitted in the Beis HaMikdash, where you can avoid doing the rabbinical malacha, you avoid it. And here we have a simple solution. Rather than pushing the coals on Shabbos into the water, which would be a rabbinic malacha, the easier thing, not the easier, but the less violation is to take the psach teir and simply cover up the coals, which is even less than throwing them into the water. Okay, it's a type of gruma, whatever it is. It's a lesser form of malacha. So here you have another example. Rather than pushing the coals into the water, which would be a rabbinic prohibition, and rabbinic prohibitions on Shabbos are mutter inside the Beis HaMikdash, because there's another alternative here to put the psach teir on the coals, we do the psach teir. Back to our dead rat. The dead rat is there in the Beis HaMikdash. We don't pick it up. The Kohen doesn't take a shovel or whatever utensil he can use to remove the sheretz on Shabbos because it's muktzah, and we retain the laws of muktzah in the Beis HaMikdash. So we take the psach teir and we cover it up. This is a machlokas in the Gemara in Eruvin. What area of the Beis HaMikdash are we talking about? The halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says that on Shabbos, if you find a dead rat anywhere in the Beis HaMikdash that is outside the Azara, back to our Midas diagram number 3, you find the dead rat on the Harabayas. You find the dead rat in the Ezras Noshim, anywhere here. You take the psach teir, you cover up the dead rat with it so that no one comes into contact with it. But Rabbi Akiva says if you find the dead rat anywhere inside the Azara, this is an area where if a human being enters this area betuma, he's chayav the heavenly death penalty. We already talked about the Ezras Noshim being separate from the Azara. The structure of the Ezras Noshim is really machane levia. It has less sanctity. The Rabbanan, the sanctity of the Ezras Noshim really is sanctity of Har Habayis, not of Beis HaMikdash. And the Rabbanan added a bit of sanctity to the Ezras Noshim, but it is not the sanctity of machane shchina of the Azara, the Beis HaMikdash itself. So Rabbi Akiva says, if in this area, Ezras Noshim as an example, you find a dead rat on Shabbos, put the psach teir on it. However, if the dead rat is found anywhere in the Azora or the Heichel, which is a place where if a person is Tomei and enters, he's chayav the heavenly death, there we don't deal with the psachter. There, even on Shabbos, it's a chiyuv d'oraisa to remove tumah from inside the Beis Hamikdash itself, the Azora, and therefore even on Shabbos, although the sheretz, the dead sheretz, is muktzah, and muktzah is a rabbinic prohibition, there is a biblical prohibition to have tumah inside the Azora, and the biblical prohibition to remove the biblical requirement to remove tumah from the Azora overpowers the rabbinic prohibition of touching muktzah. So Rabbi Akiva Shita is, yes, on Shabbos you find the dead sheretz, the Beis Hamikdash, in this area, Ezra's Noshim, cover it up with the Pesach there. You find the dead sheretz in this area of the Azora, you find a way without becoming Tomei, and you remove it, notwithstanding muktzah, on Shabbos. So we so far have two uses for our big Pesach there. One is to cover up the coals on Shabbos. One is to cover up the dead sheretz on Shabbos if it's not in the Azora. And the third use is umoridim bo es hadeshen me'al gabe hamizbeach, which is picture 52a on page 72. That was the classical use we learned about earlier in the Masechta and we mentioned today. The tapuach in the middle of the Mizbeach got too big. The Kohanim shoveled the tapuach into the psachter, and then two Kohanim took it down the ramp, and they took it outside the city of Yerushalayim to a Mokoim Tahor. Three uses for this psachter. So what we are up to right now is the winner of Lottery 3 got the kaf and the bazach from the base of Tinas, and he has the ketores with him. We have the person who's the Kohen that stood to his right, that took a silver fire pan and got 4 ounces of coal from the top of the Mizbeach, brought it down the ram and poured it into a gold pan that only has 3 ounce capacity. During the week, the coals that fell to the floor were shoveled into the water, the Amma. On Shabbos, the Pesach that was put into it. So now we're basically in a ready-to-go mode. The winner of Lottery 3 has the pan. Inside of it, the cup that has the ketores. The Kohen that stood to his right now has a fire pan of gold that has the coals in it. Mishnah Vav. Higiu ben ha'ulam v'lamizbeach. These two Kohanim, one of them has in his hand the kaf with the bazach in it, and one of them has the gold fire pan in his hand, and they find themselves ben ha'ulam v'lamizbeach. If you take a look at page 164, don't worry, we will come back later to the halachas. We didn't finish the ketores yet. Picture 218. You see 3 Kohanim. We'll get to why there are 3 Kohanim, maybe not today, but we'll get to why there are 3 Kohanim. You see there's a Kohen who has a machta in his hand. The first Kohen has the kaf, the fry pan, looks like a fry pan, and in it there's the cup of the buzzer that has the ketores in it. You can see it has a lid on top. The Kohen next to him has the gold fire pan with coals in it. And there's a third Kohen who's going to accompany them. We'll get to why there's a third Kohen here. And ahead of them, there's a Kohen, B'derech Kavod, who sort of is going to lead them into the Heichal. So Mishnah Vav, Higiu ben ha'ulam v'lamizbeach. These 3 Kohanim came between the ulam and the Mizbeach. We're right here in diagram 3. Here's the Mizbeach, here's the Ulam, here are the 12 steps of the Ulam, and our Kohanim are going to have to go up the 12 steps, walk through the Ulam, walk through the opening of the Heichel, into the Heichel, and get to the Mizbeach. So you're seeing in picture 218, page 164, they're going up the 12 steps of the Ulam. Higiu ben ha'ulam lamizbeach. Now, a very interesting thing happens here, and it's very hard to explain what it is because there's a big machlokas about what we're talking about here in the Mishnah. Higiu ben ha'ulam lamizbeach. The Kohanim, these two Kohanim, got between the ulam and the mizbeach before they went up the steps of the ulam. Midas diagram 3. There's an area between the mizbeach and the steps of the ulam before the steps begin, and they're in that area. Not al echad es hamagrefa. One of these two Kohanim, that's the Pashup Pshat, one of our two Kohanim, or the third Kohen who's accompanying them, he took the Magrefa. You want to know what a Magrefa is? Hard to know. There's a machlokes about what the Magrefa is. We learned about the word Magrefa appears in 3 different places in Maseches Tamid, and it appears that the word is used in 3 different ways. We're going to learn here that the Magrefa is some kind of musical instrument. If you want to take a look at what the Vahashiv Esavoda believes it is on page 171. They have in picture 226 a Magrefa, and then in 227 they're showing you the larger Magrefa. Picture 226 appears to be a part of the Magrefa. You can see it's a kind of musical instrument. It appears to be a wind kind of instrument. It has things you can blow in. There are 10 of these tubes. Each tube has 10 holes. And if you look at the footnote on page 171, footnote 1, it explains Magrefa. He minkli nigun shahoy b'mikdash was kind of a musical instrument in the Beis HaMikdash. Va'asarin nekavim hayuvo. There were 10 holes in it. V'chol echad ve'echad moitzi meya minei zemer. And each of them are able to produce 100 different kinds of music. There's a different shot that it produces 1,000 different types of music. It's 100 times 10, all different calculations. There's some kind of, looks like a complicated wind instrument. But the Mishnah here uses the interesting word, v'zarka bein ha'ulam v'lamizbeach. You take this musical instrument and zarka, you throw it between the ulam and the mizbeach. Why am I throwing a musical instrument? What noise does a musical instrument, especially a wind instrument? Now you throw it, it could be if you throw it very hard, the wind blows through all the holes and makes a tremendous noise. That's a possibility. There was a way to take this thing and throw it very strong, and the air went through all the different holes. Could be different sized holes, different placements, and each of them made a different noise as the wind came through it. And it was a tremendous blast of noise suddenly. We'll soon see why they made this blast of noise. That's one pshat. Zarka literally means they threw it. And they threw this because what they're doing is, this is an alarm clock for everyone else in the Beis HaMikdash to get ready to do something. We'll see that in a minute. Our 3 Kohanim are getting ready to go into the Heichal and bring the Ketores. Once they bring the Ketores, for all intent and purposes, the avoda of the Korban Tamid Shel Shachar is done, although after the Ketores is burnt, the 9 items that are on the ramp still have to be brought up to the top of the Mizbeach and burnt on the Mizbeach, and the Leviim are going to sing Shira, which we're going to get to in the next parak. The last parak, we're going to get to the Shira. That is going to happen after the Ketores. After the Ketores is burnt on the inside Mizbeach, the 9 items that are on the ramp will be brought to the top of the ramp and burnt on the ramp. The wine will be poured on the Mizbeach and the Leviim will sing. Notwithstanding that, the avoda, the Iker avoda is finished once the Ketores is burnt on the inner Mizbeach. So before they actually go to burn the Ketores on the inner Mizbeach, they're going to throw this Magrefa to cause a tremendous noise, and that's an alarm to tell everybody else to get ready to do something. The Mishnah is going to tell us what they have to get ready to do. But what does Vizorek es hamagrefa mean? What do you do when you throw it? So one shot is it's a musical instrument. You see it again on page 171, and you throw it. Perhaps the wind went through all these holes and made a tremendous noise. Another pshat, Zorka, sometimes Chazal use the word Zorka as Nizrika mipicha bura. It says that the Gemara sometimes says that a certain issue came up in the base medrash, and everyone answered at the same time. Nizrika mipicha bura. Everybody threw out the answer at the same time. Everybody spoke up at the same time. So some say the pshat is that they took the instrument, and chas v'shalom, they didn't throw the thing. Zarka, what are you throwing things in the Beis Hamikdash? Okay. Zarka bein ha'ulam lamizbeach. It means that there was a way to play this musical instrument so that all the possible noises, sounds that this instrument can make were all made at one time. I don't know how you do that. There was a way to do it. But v'zarka doesn't mean to physically throw it. It means nizrika mipi chabur. It all was done at the same time. All the possible 100 sounds or 1,000 sounds all came out at the same time. It made a tremendous amount of noise. This is what they did. They made a tremendous amount of noise. Why? The Mishnah continues. If you're living in Yerushalayim, you couldn't hear someone talking to you when this magrefa was making noise. That's how much noise it made. The whole city of Yerushalayim, you couldn't hear the person next to you talking. This noise served three separate purposes. Kohen sheshomea eskola, yodea she'echav hakohanim nechnosim l'shtachavois v'ratzuba. I'm going to learn the Mishnah now, kipshutai. There are several difficulties with the kipshutai. With the simple explanation of the Mishnah, there are several difficulties, but we're going to learn Kipshuta. We should be zeicha to see such a thing. If you take a look at page 173, although we're not up to there, if you take a look at page 173, no, the Kol Magref was not heard in Hebron, it was heard in Yericho. Yericho was the place of the miracles where they heard the Magrefa. On page 232, page 173, picture 232, you have the picture of the Kohanim doing a Hishtachavaya in the Heichel. You see that the Mizbeach has the Ketores burning on it already. All the Kohanim, once the Ketores was burning on the Mizbeach, according to the Shita Hapshuta, the simple explanation, the Ketores is burnt on the Mizbeach. The Iker Avoda is now done. All the Kohanim came into the Heichel and did a Hishtachavoya before the Rebbeinu Shalom. How did they know in the whole Beis Hamikdash that the Ketores was about to be brought? And that everybody, the Kohanim, everywhere, ought to report immediately or get ready, report to the Heichel to do the Hashtach Avoya for the end of the Avoda of the morning. They heard this Kol Magrefa. Kohen Sheshomeh Eskola, a Kohen in the Beis Hamikdash, or maybe he was on the Harabayas, he was outside the Beis Hamikdash, but the Kohen, he heard the sound of this Magrefa, Yodea she'echav haKohanim nechnosim l'shtachavois. He knows that his fellow Kohanim are getting ready to go into the Heichel to do the Hishtachavaya. V'hu ratzuva, and he ran to get as close to the Heichel as he can, so that he'd be ready to do the Hishtachavaya after the Ketores. Uben Levi shu shomei eskola, excuse me, a Levi who's in the Beis Hamikdash, and he hears this Magrefa noise, he knows what? The Ketores is about to be brought. If the Ketores is about to be brought, once the Ketores is burnt on the Mizbeach HaKetores, that means that on the outer Mizbeach, within a few seconds or minutes after that, they're going to bring the 9 items up to the Mizbeach and burn it. Actually, 8 items burnt on the Mizbeach. The 9th item is the wine. That means the wine is about to be poured in within few minutes on the Mizbeach. If the wine is going to be poured on the Mizbeach, when did the Levium sing the Shir Shel Yoim? While the wine was poured on the Mizbeach. So, here's another alarm. We're about to do the Ketoris. Once the Ketoris is done, Kohanim have to be ready for the Hishtachavaya. Levium need to get ready to sing the Shir. Ben Levi Shushamei Kola. Ben Levi hears the call of this Magrefa. Yodea she'echav haLeviim nechnasim l'daber b'shir. He knows that his fellow Leviim are getting ready to go in and sing the Shir. Where did they sing the Shir, Rabbi Isai? Our holy diagram number 3, Maseches Tamid. Right here. You walked up the 15 steps towards Sha'ar Nicanor. Inside Sha'ar Nicanor, there was a space 11 wide, 111 long, 135 wide. Ezras Yisrael, that's where Yisrael can go. The next 11 by 135 is the Ezras Kohanim. If you take a look between the I want to make sure the word's printed there, yes it is. Between the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim, the picture is showing you a line. At the top of the line, you have the word Haduchan. There were 3 steps. On those 3 steps, the Levium would stand and sing the Shir. If you want to see a picture of this royal gathering, the whole thing here is so royal, it's so regal. The clothing, the way they did this, the order in which they did it. We should be zeicher to see this. Page 195, picture 268. You have the picture of Levium on the Duchan. The Levium do not wear big day kahuna. They're not Kohanim. They have white garments. Some of them are using instruments. You can see them holding instruments. They're different klei shir. And some of them are standing on the Duchan, and they're right next to the Mizbeach, and they're going to sing the Shir. They're on the eastern side of the Mizbeach, and they are going to sing the Shir when the wine is poured on the Mizbeach. So when this Magrefa, when our 3 Kohanim are getting ready to go into the Heichel to do the Ketores, before they went up the steps of the Ulam, they quote unquote throw the Magrefa. There's a tremendous noise. Alarm 1. Kohen, if you're around, get ready to go into the Heichel V'Hishtachavaya for the end of the Avoda of the morning. Levi, where are you? We're soon going to bring the 9 items up to the Mizbeach, which means wine is going to be poured, which means get ready to sing, which means get to the Duchan. And now there's a third reason. For Rosh HaMaimed and the head of the Maimed, I'll explain to you what that is in a minute, HaYamaymed es hatmeim b'shar HaMizrach. The same way we talked about the Kohanim had mishmoros. They came every 24 weeks. Klal Yisrael had something called a Maimed. There were groups of Jewish people that rotated every 24 weeks. Yisraelim. And they came to watch the Avod in the Beis HaMikdash. This is a sugya in the last parak in Masech, the Tainus, the Maimonides. The Gemara learns out from a pasuk. It says by the Korban Tamid, the daily public offering. It says Tishmeru lahakriv li b'mo'ado. It says you should watch and make sure Tishmeru that the Korban is brought. The Korban Tamid is brought appropriately. Now, how does Klal Yisrael make sure that the Kohanim are doing the avoda appropriately? So you can't have all of Klal Yisrael in the Beis HaMikdash every single day. So Chazal made a takana. We're going to have Maimonides. Maimonides are split into 24 groups. Every week a different group came. Now, what does the word came mean? It means as follows. Every one of these 24 groups had a group leader. So now we have 24 group leaders. The group, each of these 24 group leaders lived in Yerushalayim. Several of members of his group, let's call it the Shmuel group. The Shmuel group was headed by Shmuel. Shmuel lives in Yerushalayim. Several members of Shmuel's group, who are all Yisraelim, live in Yerushalayim with him. Al Pi Pshuta, it's no less than 10. So Shmuel and his group, small group, live in Yerushalayim. Besides that, there is Shmuel group that live in other parts of Eretz Yisrael. Every 24 weeks, the Shmuel group will do the Maimonides. We'll discuss that in a minute. The next week, Zechariah group. Zechariah lives in Yerushalayim. He has 10 members of his group that live in Yerushalayim. Then there are Zechariah group members that live in other parts of Eretz Yisrael. And they're going to do the Maimid in week 2. Okay. Week 3, we have Yecheskel group. Yecheskel lives in Yerushalayim. He has 10 members that live with him in Yerushalayim. And there are other members of Yecheskel group that live in all over Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Week 1, and we have the Shmuel group. The Shmuel himself and his group that live in Yerushalayim, they come to the Beis HaMikdash every single day, and they're there to make sure, watch the avoda. They are the shluchim, they are the representatives of all the Jewish people to fulfill the mitzvah of Tishmeru. Watch and make sure the daily public offerings are brought. The second week, so we get Zechariah and his little group in Yerushalayim to watch. And they are the messengers of all of Klal Yisrael. And that includes the Zechariah people that live all over Eretz Yisrael. But the Zechariah people live all over Eretz Yisrael. They can't watch the korban. What's their job? So this is called Maimonides. It's a whole process in Masechta Tainis, in Masechta Tainis, discussion of the Maimonides. These groups of Jews, as they rotated every 24 weeks, they fasted certain days of the week. They lamed from Maisa Bereshis, from Bereshis Bar Elokim. They read every day that which was created that day. On Sunday they read Bereshis Bar Elokim as a Shema B'Sa'aretz. By Yerev Od Yom Echad, there's a question how they got 3 Aliyahs. If they got 3 Aliyahs, all Shilas in the Maimonides. But there was a whole avoda for Yisraelim to do in the Beis HaMikdash as they were watching the Kohanim doing the avoda. So we have the leader of each group lives in Yerushalayim. A small part of his group lives with him in Yerushalayim. And a larger part of his group lives all over Eretz Yisrael. Sometimes they're concentrated in another city. And when their group came up for the week, so the head of the group and those who live in Yerushalayim went to the Beis HaMikdash every day and took and watched the avoda. We'll see what else they did perhaps. And the ones who were part of the group that live in Yerushalayim, they still participate in the Maimon. They fasted certain days of the week. They did certain tefillah during their days of the week. And at the end of the week, done. Next group does the same thing. So the Jewish people themselves were broken into 24 Maimonides. And this is why we say in Musaf, V'hoshev es ha'avoda, and we talk about Kohanim b'avodasam, Leviim b'duchanam, v'Yisrael b'ma'amadam. The Kohen did the avoda, the Levi was on his duchan singing his shir, and the Yisrael was b'ma'amadam. They stood there and they watched. So the Magrefa was thrown, quote unquote, to alert the Kohanim, get to the Heichel to prepare for the Hishtach Havaya. Levi, get next to the Mizbeach, to the Duchan, to sing the Shir. Everybody get ready. And the Rosh HaMaimon, the head of that week's Maimon, whether it's Shmuel, Zechariah, Yecheskel, whoever the head was that week, Hayamayim es Hatmeim b'shar HaMizrach. He took all the Kohanim that were Tamid. Remember, we mentioned that there are Kohanim that slept in the Beis HaMokeh last night, and they want to do the Avodah today. It's their week, and it's their day, 24 Mishmoros, but each Mishmor is broken into 6 days. Seventh day, they all worked together. And the Kohanim came last night. They slept there. This morning, they got up. We begin before dawn with the first lottery, etc., etc. But during the night, some Kohanim may have become Tamid. And we learned the process by what to do with these Kohanim who became Tamid. It was a machlokas. At any rate, certain Kohanim became Tamid. And they couldn't do the avodah. They were going to leave the Beis Hamikdash. And these people, I'm giving you one of two reasons the Gemara says why this was done. People recognize these Kohanim. They know who the Kohanim were, generally. So they see Kohanim walking around the street, and it's avodah time, the Beis Hamikdash. And they're trying to figure out, what is he doing on the street? Why isn't the Beis Hamikdash doing avodah? So the head of the Maimon would take the Kohanim who became Tamid, if there were any, and he would put them at the eastern gate. Again, the Pashup Shat in the Mishnah, he put them at the eastern gate of the Har HaBayis. Rabbi said, what's the name of the eastern gate of the Har HaBayis? Shushan Abira. Rabbi said, what's the name of the two southern gates of the Har HaBayis? Sharei Cholder. Rabbi said, what's the name of the northern gate to the Har HaBayis? Teddy. Rabbi said, what's the name of the western gate to the Har HaBayis? Kippunus. So this head of the Maimon, this week we said his name Shmuel. Every day Shmuel would get up. If a Kohen became Tamid, he would take him and put him at the eastern gate of the Har HaBayis, and any Jews that generally would come, according to this Pshat in the Mishnah, would come through the eastern gate, although in Masech Tamid we learned they used the southern gate, and they would see that the Kohen was Tamid, and then they would understand that if they see the Kohen not in the Beis Hamikdash, not doing avodah, it's not because he's lazy, it's not because he doesn't like to do avodah, it's because never he became Tamid, and therefore his name, his reputation remained intact. Never he can't do the avodah because he's Tamid, and that was the third reason for the Magrefa. So this Magrefa was quote unquote thrown. Kohanim, get to the Heichal, soon is going to be the Shtach Avoya. Leviim, get to the Duchan, soon is going to be the pouring of the wine on the Mizbech, and you need to say the Shiva. Rosh Hamamid, you need to get to the Shar Shushan Abira, the eastern entrance to the Har HaBayis, to be there with the Kohanim who became Tamid, so that their reputations would not be in any way harmed by people seeing them not doing the avodah. So the Magrefa, quote unquote, was thrown as an alarm, as an alert for these three things. Kohanim, get ready, Hishtach Avoya. Leviim, get ready to sing on the Nisach Hayayim. Head of Maimon, get ready to go to the Shar Shushan Habira. That brings us to the end of Perek Hey. And Mi'at Hashem will begin Perek Vav tomorrow. And again, Bali Neder, the plan will be Bezrat Hashem. Mashiach will come, he'll build a Beis Hamikdash. He's going to bring the Karbonos. We're going to see the Shira. We're going to see what we learn come to light. Chas v'sholom, that doesn't happen. Then we will continue learning through the Zoom. And Mi'at Hashem, next Wednesday or Thursday, we will have a Siyum. Further plans and how that will go forward be very similar to the Siyum on Midos, and those plans will be, they're sent out.